Good evening from Miami. I'm Katie Fang. I'm in for Chris Hayes. In November of 2021, Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, began cooperating with the January 6th committee. Congressman Benny Thompson, the committee chair, said at the time that Meadows produced records to the committee and will soon appear for an initial deposition. Well, Meadows never did appear before the committee, as he stopped cooperating shortly thereafter. He was subsequently found in contempt of Congress and referred to the Justice Department for a possible criminal charge. But the records he turned over, including thousands of his own text messages, well, they paint a clear picture of the Republican effort to steal the 2020 election. There were texts from Donald Trump Jr. to Meadows laying out a strategy to overturn the election. There were texts from Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, imploring Mark Meadows to overturn the election. And now we have reports of nearly 100 texts between Meadows and Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah and Congressman Chip Roy of Texas that, quote, reveal an aggressive attempt to lobby, encourage, and eventually warn the White House over its efforts to overturn the election. The texts show that Senator Lee was eager to keep Donald Trump in office. On November 7th, the day the race was called for Biden, Lee texted Meadows, quote, Sidney Powell is saying that she needs to get in to see the president, but she's being kept away from him. Apparently, she has a strategy to keep things alive and put several states back in play. Can you help her get her in? Days after that text, Sidney Powell became one of the public faces of the big lie, officially representing Donald Trump and the Trump campaign and making truly wild claims like this one.
The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out.
Senator Lee was clearly rattled by that performance, texting Trump's chief of staff that same day, quote, I'm worried about the Powell press conference. The potential defamation liability for the president is significant here. Jackie Alemany is tracking these developments as a congressional correspondent for The Washington Post. She joins me now so we can break this down. Jackie, what did we learn in these particular texts that have been released that we didn't know before?
Yeah, Katie, I think what these text messages show, again, time and time again, as we've seen throughout the course of the investigation, is just how important Mark Meadows' trove of text messages to the January 6th committee has been for them to piece together a full and comprehensive picture of what exactly the former president was up to in that time period after the 2020 election and before the January 6th insurrection, as he was trying to unsuccessfully build a case to overturn the results of the election. But this new information that CNN reported, these new text messages between Mark Meadows, who was essentially the gatekeeper to the former president, and two lawmakers show to the extent of what lengths that people in elected office were going to push conspiracy theorists onto the former president and trying to help buoy some of these conspiracy theories themselves. But I think what it also shows is, once again, these are two more people that you can add to the tally of the long-running list of people who ultimately came to the conclusion that the Constitution was not on the former president's side and that he should abandon apologies. Bertha has gotten a squeaky toy.
Not at all, not at all.
That the former president should abandon this plan, and that could ultimately be used against him by the DOJ, or if this ever makes it out of the committee and into a potential criminal referral, if it shows that the former president, as you well know, Katie, you're the lawyer in this conversation, had corrupt intent.
Yeah, but Jackie, quickly, do you think the way that there was the evolution of people like Senator Lee's text messages, do you think that kind of redeems where they ended up? Because they clearly got to that point where they were saying this is all a bad idea.
Yeah, look, I can't necessarily make a conclusion about redemption here. But at the end of the day, these are people who are, again, elected officials that were propping up people like Sidney Powell and really gave them a lot of ammunition going into the aftermath of the election that has still taken a hold on a lot of the Republican Party and has created this entire universe of disinformation that was obviously very corrosive on January 6th and continues to be corrosive on our democracy. So yes, they might have come to the best case conclusions, but that didn't prevent an insurrection from happening.
Jackie, you know, these gems that we're calling them, these almost Easter eggs, no pun intended, for this weekend, they're coming out of a trove of text messages that were released by Mark Meadows before he stopped cooperating. If I'm a Republican member of Congress, you think I should be concerned that the committee may have my text messages as well?
I think that the committee has lots of people's text messages that we don't yet know about. They, gave us reporters an update today on the amount of information they've collected. They've interviewed over 181 people. That's people who have voluntarily, people who've been subpoenaed and sat for interviews and depositions. And they have over 100,000 pages worth of documents. Mark Meadows' text message consisting of a substantial, just a tiny sliver of that broader trove of documents that they've collected. But I think, undoubtedly, this is maybe potentially putting more pressure on the Department of Justice, which has yet to say whether or not they're ultimately going to decide to prosecute Mark Meadows and hold him in criminal contempt. And you could imagine that this would push them in that direction to show just how valuable Mark Meadows could be to this committee and just how many elected officials were going at the president to try to help him overturn the results of the election.
Yeah, Jackie, I don't know if you can hear it, but we actually have music playing in our studio. Sounded like the cops were coming for your pooch with the squeaky toy. Welcome to live television. Jackie Alemany from The Washington Post. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie.